Series, it's cybersecurity headlines.
Clop claims it breached 130 orgs using Go Anywhere. New Bing search hit with injection attack. AI has successfully piloted an F-16 fighter jet. These are some of the stories my colleagues and I have been bringing to you on this week's cybersecurity headlines. And now we get a chance for some insight, opinion, and expertise on these stories and more from our guest, George Al-Koura, CISO at Ruby. George, welcome to the show.
Hey, Sean. Pleasure to have me on, man. Appreciate you guys bringing me aboard for this.
Yep, looking forward to it. And our sponsor for this week is us, the CISO Series. You can join us on YouTube Live by heading to CISOseries.com and hitting the events drop down and look for the cybersecurity headlines we can review image. It's the third one down. Just click on it to join us, but don't click on any phishing emails along the way. All right, let's get into our first story. Clop ransomware claims it breached 130 orgs using Go Anywhere 0 day. The gang reached out to Bleeping Computer to state that the thefts occurred over 10 days. They also claim that it could move laterally through the victims' networks and deploy ransomware to encrypt their systems, but decided only to steal documents stored on the compromised Go Anywhere MFT servers. How nice of them. The gang refused to provide proof of infiltration, the thefts, or extortion activity. So, George, interesting story here. I mean, why do you think Clop would hold back on the proof? Do you think it was a publicity stunt? And even if it was, could the company still suffer, from reputational damages, things like that? Sort of a ransom by rumor scenario seems to be shaping up here. What's your take?
Well, first of all, I see two main issues that stand out to me on this story in particular. The first one, really from a security practitioner standpoint, is the need to invest, in a truly robust and hardened secure DevOps approach to building and protecting your code. The fact is that we have seen a notable rise in zero-day vulnerabilities across some of the biggest enterprises in the world in the last year or two. Apple, even this week, recently had a critical one revealed over a WebKit vulnerability that forced them to hastily push out an out-of-band security update for Mac OS. The second issue, is the need for client-side organizations to invest in a strong vulnerability management program with regular patching cycles that are more frequent than just once a quarter. And I've seen some pretty lazy companies and organizations out there when it comes to their vulnerability management and patching. This is the biggest risk that comes from not putting in the right level of attention, detail, and investment in your VM and patching process. When you're working at a supplier-side firm such as a Fortra, it's important to make yourself as expert as possible, to current trends in today's supply chain attack risks. When firms like a Fortra or recently like Okta or GitHub get compromised, they become an immediate point of risk for every single one of their clients. It serves to decay trust in that supplier and weakens the reputation of both them and their clients, resulting in potentially critical financial losses for their business.
Yeah, I like how you put the responsibility on the defending orgs. I know we were trying to take you down the path of the tactics, that were being used by Clop here, and I agree with everything you said makes total sense. Do you have any thoughts on the Clop piece of it? Do you think it was publicity? Or there's something legit underneath, or it's a who knows kind of scenario?
I mean, from what I could see about these guys, they really look like your typical cybercrime gang that's out for profit. So I think on one hand there is publicity. There's a certain fear mongering that they want to get done. I mean, that's how they're kind of approaching it. They're trying to elicit fear in the potential organizations that they're claiming to have compromised. Whether or not that actually turns into something, or whether or not they actually use that information to facilitate further campaigns, that's yet to be seen. But the fact of the matter is, they know that those clients do not have the right level of maturity to defend confidently against their types of attacks. So they can then put that kind of pressure on them. And it then kind of leads to an environment where they could execute even more attacks, because then you're going to have an untrained security climate, or I guess an untrained threat climate for the employees in those organizations. It really just kind of creates the potential for even more damaging attacks, because those organizations weren't ready for the first ones.
Super interesting take. Thanks for that one. Let's move on to the next story. New Bing search hit with injection attack. Microsoft has begun rolling out access to its new Bing search with AI integration using the Prometheus engine. Stanford student Kevin Liu used a prompt injection to discover a list of statements showing how the system interacts with users. These injections can be used to circumvent limits and instructions in language model prompts. So AI is, I don't think that's going away anytime soon, at least from the headlines. We've been covering it all week, fast and furious. With February appearing to be the month that AI finally took over the world, this injection attack seems to be the dark side of AI capability. So it follows on closely about ChatGPT's evil twin Dan, and now Sydney. So as a CISO, what here would you be concerned about, and how would you kind of address the C-suite here too if they start obviously seeing these headlines and their concerns start to rise?
First of all, I think a lot of people are going to read a lot more deeply into the story than I think is necessary. Like, it's important to point out that Kevin, the student there who came up with the POC for that inject attack, his actions were part of a select beta test group. If a product is in beta testing, that means they're still, working out the kinks, if you will, in their data models, formulas, and outputs. In my honest opinion, the current batch of AI chatbots and technologies, you know, they're actually only in their infancy. We still don't understand their full potential or even how to operate these tools in a safe and secure manner. And I think, if I'm talking to a C suite about this, I'm saying this is new technology. They still don't even know how to use it. They've said it's in beta. If this was the full and final production release version of the new Bing search engine, I would be a lot more concerned about Microsoft or OpenAI's lack of defined QA, in a security review process and product development. But at this point, I see this as something that Microsoft probably anticipated and even planned for within this beta test cycle.
Yeah, really interesting. And the more I see, the more I think going production is actually just full beta. Nothing ever seems fully baked when it comes when it goes out to the full user community, and we have to clean up the mess as cyber professionals.
Welcome to software dev in 2023, friend.
There we go. All right, on to the next story. And following on with the AI theme, AI has successfully piloted an F-16 fighter jet. The U.S. DoD's research agency, DARPA, announced that they've successfully completed several AI-controlled flights with their F-16 test aircraft at Edwards Air Force Base. DARPA said it doesn't expect the plane to fly without a pilot, but that AI will control the jet and provide flight data while the, quote, human pilot focuses on larger battle management tasks in the cockpit, excuse me. And quote there. So George, not a surprise, right? We've had autopilot and we've got drones. We've had drones for some time now. What's your take on this one? I think if you read into the story, they're planning on actually doing a demonstration, a dogfight over Lake Ontario next year with AI controlled fighter jets. So, are we finally getting to war games here, or is it a sort of a ho hum and just the next step in the evolution? Sorry, folks. Looks like we lost George there. We'll get back to you in just a moment. But you're welcome to drop your thoughts into the chat while we're waiting. Guess George did not want to talk about the fighter jet story with us. We're just trying to reconnect them. So thank you for thank you for the patience and the conspiracy theories about AI maybe being to blame here.
Hey, I'm just coming on to join you here for a second while we're waiting for George to come
Thanks,
back.
David.
Good to
I
see
was
you,
getting
Sean.
getting lonely.
Let's just hope that George comes back sometime soon. I'm not as well prepared as George was for these stories, and we're not. When we release this as an audio, me is going to be completely removed from this, and God willing, we're going to get George back sometime soon, so we can finish this off. Because the majority of you watch this audio, but how many people are watching? So we only have a few of you watching this on YouTube right now. So this is not a major big deal. But I have not received any communication from George. Let me look on LinkedIn to see if he's pinged me over there. Hold on. But we have lost him completely. Yes. He dropped off. Hold on. Here he's coming back. I'm dropping off.
All right. Thanks, David.
Oh,
Man,
my apologies about that. Where'd you lose me?
I guess you didn't want to talk about the fighter jets, the AI controlled fighter jets. This was my assumption. Some said maybe Sydney took care of it, but yeah. So I think we were just getting to the question. Hopefully you heard the story recap. So
I did, yeah.
The question is, what's your thoughts on the AI capability within the F-16 fighter jets?
Okay, I'll go from the start here. I'm of the opinion that this is one of the most important developmental applications for AI technology in the world today. By changing the role of the human element, piloting wartime aircraft such as fighter jets and in turn long-range bombers, the entire dynamic of warfare as we know it will begin to dramatically change. This will create a massive delta between the more technologically advanced states in the world and those still operating under the now archaic 20th century kind of frameworks and technology offers. One other note that was mentioned in the article from Vice that should be of interest are the potential impacts of AI enhanced wearable technologies as well, because they go hand in hand. These changes represent not only a dramatic shift in the lethal effectiveness of operations on both land and in the air, but also how the long-standing game of intelligence warfare is going to be conducted.
I actually covered this one this week, and I was definitely struck by the story, and it's interesting that your statements kind of double down on the importance of where we're going here. It is scary when you think of the implications as well. So it will be interesting. I had mentioned there is a dogfight scheduled for 2024, going to be scheduled over Lake Ontario with the AI controlled jets. So it will be interesting to see what that looks like and what happens between now and then. Everything seems to be moving really quickly.
I mean, I come from a very heavy defense background myself. I'm a proud Army veteran, so this was like dear to my heart when I saw you guys put this one up.
Great. Well, thanks for your service, and also thanks for your comments. All right, we'll go on to the next story. Hackers breached Pepsi Bottling network last Friday. Pepsi Bottling Ventures sent an email to its consumers disclosing the breach of its network after discovering that info-stealing malware had been deployed on its network back in December of last year, but wasn't discovered for about a month later. So interesting with the delay there. So George, it seems like a standard PII theft, and maybe not OT related, but should we be thinking about this as critical infrastructure, giving, targeted on food products? And then there's the piece about the delay and even noticing the malware being there. So what are your thoughts here?
I mean, first of all, from a supply chain risk standpoint, obviously, I mean, this is a PepsiCo manufacturer, but it could also be, medications at some point, or it could be critical water supplies, considering how drinking water is growing in importance nowadays. Like realistically, though, my biggest issue at play here is the lack of transparency by PBV around the attack and the compromise itself. I mean, what the article is missing, and what is really, in my opinion, the most important part of the story, is the delay between when the breach happened, when PBV discovered it, and when they informed their customers and the state attorney general. The article is one thing, but if you actually open up the notice letter, the notice letter to the attorney general linked within it, there are a world of company management and security operations red flags exposed in this attack. There was a dark period of 18 days post the initial attack where the company had no clue that they were breached, an additional 9 days before they could internally confirm the last instance of known unauthorized access, and then it took them an additional 22 days to make the public and legal disclosures to their staff, clients, and law enforcement. That's 49 days between when the breach occurred and the investigation was concluded to a point of public disclosure. It's absolutely unacceptable in the post-COVID remote revolutionary era that it takes you that long to figure out what's going on and to make your proper disclosures. The breach should have been used this breach should be used as a post-secondary school case of a case study on risk management and kind of how you should learn from doing and not doing the right approaches to this. Hopefully HPV or Pepsi bottling vehicle had substantially upped investment into their security programs and teams following this attack. It really bothers me. I'm sorry, when companies do this and they're not fully transparent, it really grinds my gears.
Yeah, it looks like there's some work to do there on the detect and respond portions, and of course disclose. So it does, whether it was done, whatever the intents were, it doesn't look great for Pepsi bottling there. And thanks for your thoughts there. So we'll move on, spend a few moments with our sponsor, which is us, the CISO Series. If it is important, it will likely be in Cybersecurity Headlines update in the morning, and it allows me and my team to dig in a little more on aspects that might affect our technology stack, said Sean Bowen, CISO for World Fuel Services. Security leaders listen and make decisions based on what they hear on this very show. Do you have a solution that needs to find the attention of the right audience of cyber professionals? If you're interested, email us at info@cisoseries.com. All right, let's move on to our next story. Data brokers hoover up U.S. mental health data. A new study found 11 data brokers willing to sell tranches of personal data from Americans, including mental health information. They included information on what antidepressants they were taking, if they struggled with insomnia, Alzheimer's disease, or bladder control issues, among some others. While HIPAA restricts how covered health entities share health data, its protections don't apply once the data is sent elsewhere. While some brokers offer opt-out to individuals, those individuals probably don't realize that the data is even there or what type of data the broker has in their possession. So I thought this was quite an interesting, eye-opening story. So what's your thought? The data is protected up until it gets sold or changes hands, and then it seems to be sort of free game. So what are your thoughts on the privacy implications here?
I mean, you kind of, to understand why this story is important, you have to go into it reading it with the understanding that data is quickly becoming one of the most valuable commodities on earth, even more so than oil or gold. So the data, I think it should be always protected because, it's PII. And at the end of the day, that's the most exposable type of data. Duke's study is a particularly troubling issue because health data is considered some of the most private and personal data that both consumers and medical care providers share. That's why HIPAA is such an important mandate. The resale of this data can allow for the manipulation of market advertising for big pharma that can give them a distinct advantage in specifically targeting ads for patients by region. In a sense, it's a form of social engineering that can yield maximizing profits for the purchasers while also having debilitating consequences for users who can easily become hooked on those medications. Worse yet, the compromise of HIPAA data by sales to unregulated entities means that victims can easily become victims of targeted social engineering-based attacks by cybercrime organizations who are growing particularly good at spoofing real supplier companies such as pharmaceuticals in order to further compromise unsuspecting target victims who could be, at a critical low point in their mental health journeys and are willing to almost try anything to feel better. One click on a spoofed lead or on a spoof link, could lead to worlds of credit card fraud or bad actor presence on their systems, leading to wholesale data exfiltrations of some of America's most vulnerable communities.
Yeah, I think in the health information, like you said, I mean, different than a credit card, which you could, if compromised, swap out, right? And your health information in history doesn't ever go away. So I full agreement on the value of that data and the importance of protecting it. Seems like there's definitely a bit of a loophole there that needs to be closed. Let's move on to our next story here. So Hyundai and Kia to update anti-theft software on millions of vehicles. So Hyundai and its subsidiary Kia are now offering free software updates for roughly 8.3 million of their cars in response to a rash of car thefts, after the so-called Kia challenge went viral on TikTok. The video showed how to bypass vehicle security system with simple tools like USB cables. The security update will implement an ignition kill feature to effectively neutralize the theft technique. The company previously charged $170 to upgrade, and now they're offering it for free, which is an interesting. So we've seen a lot of weaknesses, vulnerabilities arising from car technology, and seems to have been a tech/physical weakness here that was uncovered. So, what are your thoughts about what car manufacturers can and should be doing to secure themselves, and also, how they handled the fixed rollouts? I guess in this case seems interesting too.
Well, first of all, anti-theft software is a necessary and natural solution for all these new data and internet-enabled vehicles. That should have been something that's considered from the start. You know, if it was made part of the original development cycle for these more kind of advanced connected vehicle models, like the Kia boys, quote unquote, they wouldn't have been a thing. You know, I remember actually reading about the Kia boys some time ago when this came up and thinking to myself, how is security not considered during the product and software development processes for these cars? Like hindsight's always 2020, but I think greater accountability from manufacturers needs to be established when introducing new technologies into commercially distributed products.
Yeah, and I'll make you say it. Why do you think the anti-theft software wasn't rolled into the car to begin with, or the cars, I should say, in this case?
Because they wanted to make money. Anytime security is bypassed, they want to get to market quicker and they want to make money.
Yep. Thank you for that. All right, we're going to move on to our last story here. Evolving cyber attacks and alert fatigue creating DFIR burnout. And we'll talk about DFIR in a second if you don't know what that is. According to a 2023 global survey by Magnet Forensics, the evolution of cybercrime is weighing heavily on digital forensics and incident response, or DFIR, teams, leading to significant burnout, potential regulatory risk. More than half of DFIR professionals surveyed say they feel burned out by their jobs, with 64% stating that alert and investigation fatigue is likely a contributing factor. So this one kind of speaks for itself, but as a CISO, I'm sure you have your own perspective and experience with this. So what's your take on the burnout and the fatigue here that's being caused by this type of job?
First of all, I absolutely agree with your assessment. The story does speak for itself. I came from a security operations background, eventually growing into a CISO role. I remember in 2016, 17, I was working at a big global MSP, and we had over 80 clients, some really big folks in the finance world, really big folks in oil and gas. And anytime anything happened, I was working 24/7. You were constantly going, and if an alert triggered and it was a Pry 1 on a critical client, and that contract was going up for renewal soon, and it was like, it doesn't matter if it was 45 minutes left in your 8 or 10-hour shift, you were sticking around to see that thing through. So, you do that enough times in a row, enough weeks in a row, as an analyst, your quality of life starts to go down, and really your desire to continue in the game, it starts to burn out as well. I mean, you could talk about the funding issue where we're not hiring enough actual frontline analysts to do the job. You could talk about the support issue where we're not actually providing them with enough mental health support. You can talk about the technology issue where we're not equipping our teams with the most cutting edge technologies to actually handle the complexity of these problems. It's a multifaceted issue that really focuses on how much is your organization invested in having a top of the line security operations team. Because if you don't have a good SecOps capability, your DFIR guys are going to burn out.
Well, that was a great summary there on where our focus should be to prevent this type of thing, because it is important that we keep people healthy, and burnout definitely is contrary to that. So thanks for your thoughts on that and all of your thoughts. George, any thumbs up and or eye roller stories that we talked about today?
So quickly, thumbs up. Obviously, the AI enhanced fighter jets. That is, I grew up on Top Gun. It's a dream. I'm so excited for this. I live beside Lake Ontario. I hope I get to catch a glimpse of it. Thumbs down to Pepsi Bottling Company there, because I mean, really, you guys, that was Bush League. You can do better than that.
All right. We'd also like to put a quick plug in for George's InfoSec podcast, Bare Knuckles and Brass Tacks, which you can find on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So, George, if people would like to also find you on the interwebs, if they're so inclined, where can they find you?
Yeah, thank you for doing that. Shout out to George Kamid, my partner on that. You can find me on LinkedIn. Look up George Al-Koura. I'll be George A on there, or you can look me up on Twitter at George Al-Koura with no hyphen.
Awesome. Well, thanks again to George Al-Koura, CISO at Ruby. Thank you also to our sponsor, us, the CISO Series, And a reminder, you can join us next week for Super Cyber Friday. Our topic will be on hacking vulnerability remediation. We'll talk for an hour about how to improve the efficiency of picking what vulnerabilities need to be fixed next and by who. All right, that will be followed by the Week in Review show. And in the meantime, you can still get your daily news fix of cybersecurity headlines every day in about 6 minutes. You can also subscribe to the show via the newsletter on LinkedIn. There you can read and hear the show. Just go to CISO Series page on LinkedIn to subscribe. Thank you for joining us, everybody, and have a great weekend.
Cybersecurity headlines are available every weekday. Head to CISOSeries.com for the full stories behind the headlines.